R.A.R.E shooter here. Hello YouTube. Now, the Second Amendment. What I'm not going to do, I'm not going to get in on this debate over the Second Amendment. Because you can't debate something that's not up for debate. The Second Amendment is a God-given right. See, let me explain to you. The way I see it is this. The Founding Fathers acknowledged certain God-given rights in the Bill of Rights. And the Second Amendment is what the people, we the people, use to protect those other rights. It's pretty much that simple. I may be oversimplifying it. I just may be. But it's definitely what we use. We the people, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now with the Second Amendment, let's talk about what the Second Amendment does and what it does not do. What the Second Amendment does not do is give us the right to bear arms. It does not give us that. All it does is acknowledge that that right is God-given. And it tells the government that it cannot be infringed upon. They can make no law that inhibits or just excludes anything when it comes to bearing arms. So every gun law that's ever been made is unconstitutional. It's pretty much that simple. It's unconstitutional. Now, let's go into the ramifications of toying or playing with the Second Amendment. Now, the title of this video is Ignoring the Second Amendment, because from the beginning of modern times, this government has ignored, from the very first gun law, they have ignored the Second Amendment. Period. They have ignored it. Now, the first gun law, some would argue in the 1930s, no. The first gun laws were actually enacted during slavery to keep guns out of the hands of slaves. The other big ones came during Jim Crow to keep guns out of the hands of blacks. Now, we have to understand, Mao said, guns are the source of all political power. And Mao controlled all the guns, so he controlled his people. See, disarming people, historically, has made it easy for tyrannical governments or dictators to rule over or to even, in many cases, exterminate or commit genocide against a people. Let's talk about those instances. Turkey and got to get my glasses, my young man eyes. Turkey and the Armenians. First, they lied to the Armenians, and they drafted the Armenian men, all that were serving age or fighting age. And then when they brought them into the army, they separated them from their assigned units and carted them off and killed them all. Secondly, they confiscated all guns. That wasn't hard because they already had gun registration. And if you didn't turn a gun in, if you didn't have a gun to turn in, you were tortured. So a lot of people were buying guns on the black market so that they'll have something to give the government when they came. And the final stage, genocide. 1.5 million Armenians killed. Second case, Native Americans right here in the great US of A. First, disarmed them. Then started a campaign of slaughtering them. And those that remained were taken from their native land and moved on to reservations. One big instant, the Trail of Tears, where a lot of Native American peoples died. Another occasion, the Soviet Union. First, they enacted gun license laws so that they knew where the guns were. The second step was to confiscate said guns. And most of this was done against the Ukrainians first. This was done against the Ukrainians first. And then, once they confiscated the guns, the Ukrainians decided that this is too much because they had seized all the farms and controlled all the food, and they were pretty much starving the people out. The Ukrainians decided that they had enough, but by the time they decided that they had enough, they had already confiscated all their weapons, and all they had was farm implements and rocks to fight back with. So who do you think won that? China. First, they prohibit private ownership of guns. Then the government confiscated all land and crops, and they controlled the food. Sounds familiar? Same thing the Soviet Union did. Then they drafted all the able-bodied men into the military, and if they didn't show up, they were hunted down and killed. Now, at some point, the Japanese invaded China. And because the Chinese people were disarmed, it was just like shooting fish in a barrel. 4.5 million people killed. Again, Emperor Mao said, guns are the source of all political power. Control the guns, i.e. control the weapons, control the people. Nazi Germany. Germany already had gun registration, so when Hitler came into power, he didn't have any problem confiscating guns because he knew where all the guns were. That's why we fight so hard against gun registration. That is the reason why. That's the reason there are ghost guns on the market. I don't have any of those, and I don't deal in that, but there's a rationale behind what people do. You just have to ask why. They confiscated all the guns. No gun. They had gun licenses to private citizens, but the Jews were not allowed to obtain gun licenses. Then they attacked the Jews. Since the Jews were not allowed to have weapons of any kind, not a spear, not a bow and arrow, not of any kind, the Jews were helpless, and thus they went on a campaign of genocide. 5 million Jews killed. 6 million critics of the Nazi government killed. 6 million critics, gypsies, political opponents, Slavs, pacifists, and disabled people were killed. All together with Jews and everybody else, 11 million plus. The question, are you willing to place your life in the hands of a government that may have some ulterior motives or hatred? I'm not saying that our government is there at this point, but the forefathers saw that this may happen in creating a free state, a state run by the people. They understood the process to gain independence, and the reason we were able to fight for independence was because our population was armed. And they never wanted that to change, because that's a God-given right for a man to defend himself. To defend himself against a tyrannical government, to defend himself against other governments, to defend himself, to defend this freedom. We the people, a government by the people, of the people, period. That's what they saw. And the constant erosion of the Second Amendment eats away at every other right we have in this country, folks. I mean, you have to really understand what I'm saying. The erosion of the Second Amendment eats away at every other right we have in this country. A population that is not able to defend themselves is a population that will be easily controlled or easily killed. Someone that has the weapons can impose their will upon said population. Once all these things had something in common. All of the incidences that I went through have something in common. Once the people were disarmed, they came surprisingly easy to kill and easy to control. Now, there's 7 parts of the Constitution that there are only 7 parts that are specifically named and deemed ineligible and deemed to be something that can't be changed, something that can't be traded on or treaded on. 1, we the people. That says the government is of the people, by the people. We are the government. We run this country. Number 2, the militia, being second only to the people, because the militia is made up of who? The people. And we're not talking about the National Guard like some will argue. We're not talking about the United States military. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the militia, the people. 3, the states. The states. The states who have sub and their own governments that are run by who? Again, the people. Number 4, the United States. Those groups of people, those states come together and form a United States. Number 5, the Congress. The Congress are representatives of the people from every state. They're not only representatives of the people, they are members of the people. And we'll talk about the whole Congress and that whole thing and term limits in a second. I'll get to that. Number 6, the president. There's rules to being a president. That's why we had the big birther argument and all that old kind of stuff, man. You have to be born here to be president of the United States. So the president is also one of the people. Number 7, the Supreme Court. And the importance of these things is in this order. The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court does not interpret the Constitution. The Supreme Court interprets laws and makes sure those laws does not interfere with the Constitution. But in these days, the Supreme Court is watering down the Constitution and rewriting it as they see fit. That's why it's so important for incoming presidents, when they have Supreme Court justices that are retiring or whatever, it's important that they get in there and they appoint people that think like them. Those people don't have to think. We need those people to make sure that the laws that are being enacted does not go against the Constitution. The Constitution, we don't need lawyers or highly educated people for the Constitution. It is written in plain English. Those laws that they're interpreting are not written in plain English. So they have to do some interpretation to make sure that they don't infringe with our plain English Constitution. A well-regulated militia means organized and trained regularly. That means the people come together and organize and train regularly to be prepared to defend the United States of America. And I'm not talking about the United States Army. I'm not talking about the National Guard. I'm talking about the people. Because the fact of the matter is, and the one big fear that the forefathers had, was that this government of the people will get some tyrannical individuals in power, and they may try to turn this into the exact thing that our forefathers fought against. The very thing that they fought against. They fought against a government where they had taxation with no representation, where there was a monarch that was over us, a dictator, or whatever you want to call it. They were ensuring that that would never happen to this free state. Now, militias are supposed to not, and I'm not talking about white supremacist organizations or any extremist organization. I'm talking about militias. Militias are supposed to communicate with whatever groups are in their area and groups around the country. We are supposed to stay prepared. That's our duty as American citizens. To stay prepared, to stay armed, and to stay trained to defend this country. My friends, it's that simple. This is not a debate. This is not R.A.R.E shooter's opinion. This is the Constitution of the United States of America. And we allow people to drag us into these long drawn out debates and arguments about whether guns are safe or unsafe, or whether they make us safer or not safer. It's not up for debate, people. It's not about what you feel. It's not about your opinion or your experience. It's not about any of that. It's not about whether a congresswoman gets shot in the head. It's not about whether a person gets shot down the street. It's not about that. It is about us law-abiding American citizens defending the right of people to do and to live the way they see fit. Period. Thank you for listening to my rant. R.A.R.E shooters, as usual, peace, stay armed, stay trained.